Okay, so I think we can start. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on nature-based solutions at the heart of urban infrastructure renewal. My name is Dirk Krol. I'm the Executive Director of Water Europe, and it's a pleasure to open this webinar organized by Water Europe's expert group on green-gray infrastructure and nature-based solutions. I'd like to thank the expert group leaders, speakers, and participants for joining today's session. Especially as across Europe, much of our urban water infrastructure is reaching the end of its lifetime, as we see pipes, drainage systems, and water infrastructures built 50, 60, or even 100 years ago will need major renewal in the coming decades. And of course, this represents not only a technical, but also a financial challenge. But at the same time, it is also a strategic opportunity. As too often, infrastructure renewal still happens piecemeal, meaning gray infrastructure replacing gray infrastructure. But if we continue doing that, of course, we risk locking ourselves into systems that are insufficiently resilient for future climate conditions. Nature-based solutions therefore offer an opportunity to rethink infrastructure in a more integrated, multifunctional, and climate resilient way. At Water Europe, and I think most of you are in the meantime aware of that, we are promoting a water smart society and economy. In that vision, nature-based solutions are not just decorative add-ons, they are a part of the resilient hybrid gray-green infrastructures that can deliver water security, climate adaptation, biodiversity, livability, and wider ecosystem benefits at the same time. Now, the challenge today is no longer proving that nature-based solutions can work. The real challenge are governance, implementation, financing, maintenance, and understanding the financial value and sustainability and integration into standard urban renewal processes. This is exactly what we try to do in today's webinar, where we will address through practical experiences from Porto and from Mechelen. I encourage everyone to actively engage in the discussion and exchange perspectives and experiences. With that, I'm pleased to hand over to Fabrizio Lagasco and the expert group teams to guide us to today's session. Fabrizio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dirk, for this introduction. Could you please confirm you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you all for joining us today. It's indeed a pleasure to contribute to this webinar on behalf of the Water Europe Expert Group on Green-Gray Infrastructure and Nature-Based Solutions. My name is Fabrizio Lagasco. I'm with RINA, a multinational organization dealing with engineering, testing, inspection, certification services abroad the world. And in RINA, I lead the R&D activities on emerging markets, and I have really the honor to co-lead this expert group together with Lara Wendling, the leader, and with the guidance of our mentor, Frans van der Ven. The expert group mission is to advance innovation and accelerate the uptake of nature-based and hybrid blue-green-gray approaches to water management. We work across urban, rural, and catchment scales, promoting solutions that can strengthen climate resilience, water security, and biodiversity, while ensuring alignment with European policy ambitions for water smart society, as Dirk said. In doing so, we focus not only on generating knowledge, but also on bridging research, practice, and policy, fostering exchange among stakeholders. The webinar actually is part of an ongoing series following previous sessions on landscape scale, MBS, and on digital innovation for monitoring and maintenance. Today, we focus on a particular pressing challenge: how to integrate MBS into the renewal of existing urban infrastructure. As Dirk said, and as we all know, a large share of Europe's water infrastructure is aging and will require replacement in the coming decades. However, some practices often remain fragmented, with intervention that address failure locally, but doing so reproducing traditional gray solutions, really. This creates a missed opportunity. The transition we need is not simply about replacing assets, it is about rethinking the system as a whole, moving towards integrated, multifunctional and resilient infrastructures where MBS are not an add-on, but a core component of the design. So today's session has therefore a twofold objective. First, to stimulate a reflection on how we can shift from piecemeal gray replacement to integrated MBS-based infrastructure systems. And the second is to explore real-world experiences addressing governance, financial, technical, and institutional barriers while identifying practical pathway for implementation. So now looking at the agenda, after a short leaf poll to map our audience, please capture the QR code with your mobile or memorize the Mentimeter number to be used both by PC or mobile phone. France will introduce a keynote on the role of nature-based solutions in enhancing urban resilience. This will be followed by two insightful case studies from Portugal. Ruben Fernandez will illustrate solutions on governing green-gray transitions, and from the city of Mechelen, Alexandra Windricks will showcase a concrete transformation towards a water-related urban model. We then open the floor for discussion and exchange. Now, with that, I would like to hand over to Franz and Tiffany and the speakers to lead us through the core of today's session. Thank you again, and I wish we all an engaging, productive, and productive webinar. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fabrizio. Now I leave the floor to Franz to start this webinar by presenting and introducing the role of nature-based solution. Franz, you're muted.
We don't hear it. Yeah.
Yes. You're still muted, Franz. Ah, perfect.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm coughing a bit. I have a cold, so that's why I switched off my microphone. Well, to introduce the subject, there's two reasons I think to position nature-based solutions at the heart of urban infrastructure renewal. And now this is not working for some reason. I think, as emphasized by Dirk and by Fabrizio already, much of our infrastructure is aging and needs replacement in the next, say, few decades. It's already at an age of 60 to 100 years old, and leakage is increasing, repairs are need to be made. So, well, there's a lot of developments going on in infrastructure renewal, and on the one hand, this looks like an ideal window of opportunity for implementing nature-based solutions. Yet we see that the replacement is made piecemeal, and nature-based solutions are not often considered in the transition to this green, water-smart society, despite all the EU policies, national and local policies in place. So that is surprising, and apparently there's a lot of barriers to be overcome. Then there's another reason to think of nature-based solutions and implementing nature-based solutions, and that is the need for urban resilience. As we have seen, we have to make our infrastructure more climate resilient. All infrastructure was built on the design criteria of the past climate, whereas the new climate sets new criteria for our design. So we have to redevelop and renew anyway. And on the one hand, that is seems to be an ideal situation to implement nature-based solutions, not only because they provide the protection level that is the new protection level that is required from our infrastructure, but nature-based solutions also have a better capacity to cope with extreme conditions. They have the capacity to recover quickly from disaster. They are adaptable to changing conditions in the future. And well, in a way, they have the capacity to transform our way of working in the future. So indeed, that is good news for implementing nature-based solutions. Yet we see that the policies, financing, governance issues are creating barriers in practice. And okay, I listed a few of these gaps and these barriers that we see nowadays, not only in the field of technical limitations, but also spatial limitations seem to be barriers for implementation. Safety in terms of weak performance of nature-based solutions and extreme weather conditions is a point to be considered, I think, as well as the legal and regulatory requirements set for nature-based solutions. Financing is not always prepared to deal with nature-based solutions. In particular, the costs of maintenance is an issue that is often to be covered separately. So there's a lot of barriers we see in practice for nature-based solutions, yet we know that their performance is already proven. And we see that the number of applications is increasing slowly in practice, but there's still the large-scale mainstreaming in the context of urban infrastructure renewal is a challenge to be taken up by all of us. And that is why I'm so pleased to see that we have two cases, two front runners that are willing to present their results in practice so far. Ruben will present the case of Porto and Alessandra on Mechelen. But okay, as we will see in the presentations, is this the perfect solution? Well, maybe not. Maybe we have to continue our discussion on how to accelerate nature-based solutions in urban water infrastructure renewal in the further discussion. And I'm looking forward to discuss this with you. Thank you so much, and I would like to give the floor to Porto, but maybe not before Tiffany has switched on to the Mentimeter question on who is in our audience at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Franz. So, perfect. I'm going to share the Mentimeter so that we can just start to see who are you and from which sector you come from. I will just take a minute to let you log in, scan or put the code, and we will start. So I leave you guys to respond. So which sector best describe the current work area? A lot from academia. Sustainability professionals. Wow, so it's still a diverse audience that we have. For the ones who maybe answer other, you can always put it in the chats so we can understand where you come from.
Well, I'm pleased to see the number of practitioners in the audience. So because they are really confronted with the practicalities of the problems in place in introducing nature-based solutions.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. Keep the Menti with you. We will come back for the Q&A session. But in the meantime, I will leave the floor for our two study cases, starting with Ruben Fernandez. So, Ruben, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good morning.
It's not your presentation, I think. I'm sorry.
Not mine? No, it is mine. I think. Not mine? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's try it again. Yeah, okay. Okay. Now you can see it,
Yes.
right? Properly.
Perfect.
Okay, continue to share. Okay, so good morning and thank you for the introduction, friends. I'd like to start my presentation setting the frame. Portal's experience has real achievements, but this presentation focuses on what the evidence reveals about structural limits more, because that is where the learning is more transferable. Porto, as I will show you, had the best conditions in Portugal: integrated mandate, European funding, political commitment, and technical capacity. But my argument today is the following. Even here, even under these conditions, structural transition to nature-based solutions did not happen in a systemic way. And the reasons that can explain this are multifold, and we'll get to there. So in many territories, and well, Franz already told that urban drainage infrastructure is more or less 50 to 100 years old. When a pipe fails, it gets replaced with a new pipe. And every time we open the ground, and we usually close it gray, so we miss a window to implement green. This is not, in my opinion, a technical problem. Engineers know how to integrate green with gray. The problem is more governance. And if we look at this timeline on this slide, we can see that the shift has already happened, especially in cities and countries that built the right conditions. For example, Copenhagen, Singapore, Rotterdam, New York, 3 decades of evidence. And the common thread isn't technical ambition. From my experience, I identify 3 specific conditions: dedicated finance, a legal mandate, and governance at the catchment scale. So Porto's integrated urban flood resilience program, which is called in Portuguese Porto Mais Permeável, a more permeable Porto, was launched in 2023. And I would like you now to show what it achieved and where it met significant barriers. So before Porto, some context on the sector it operates in. In Portugal, stormwater is not a regulated service. There's no dedicated budget, no cost recovery, no regulatory oversight. The National Water Strategy, Água que Une, in English, Water That Unites, approved in 2025, was developed within a group, Águas de Portugal, whose mandate covers water supply and wastewater only. This means that nature-based solutions appear only marginally in the strategy, and urban drainage doesn't appear at all. The National Water, Wastewater, and Stormwater Strategic Plan, PENSARP 2030, has proposed viable funding models for stormwater, including a dedicated tariff, but none of this has been put in place to date. So at the end of the day, no Portuguese municipality charges for stormwater drainage. And against this backdrop, we have Águas de Engenho do Porto, the Porto's water utility, which is an outlier. It is the only water utility with a fully integrated mandate in Portugal, covering water supply, wastewater, stormwater, water courses, seafront area, energy, all in one institution. And this is the reason why, well, Porto is considered here today in this presentation as a stress case. And yet, even in Porto, even Porto operates under the same structural conditions as every other Portuguese municipality, which means that the integrated mandate that Porto has can only change what is possible inside the institution itself. It does not change the framework around it. So moving to Porto, the best conditions available, let's see what Porto could achieve. And this map tells the story of 2 centuries of urbanization. Porto has 85 kilometers of streams and rivers. 82% of them are underground, piped, eaten. So the historic center sits at the convergence of 2 buried rivers. This means maximum flood vulnerability and also minimum space for nature. Every orange line in this map is a former natural river. The question Porto's program asked is simple. When we open the ground to renew these structures, what do we put back? And this question actually extends beyond water courses. Every drainage intervention in water courses, stormwater, wastewater networks is an opportunity for SUDs. And even though modest individually, collectively, they build resilience at the city scale. So the question is, do we seize that opportunity or do we just close it gray? In this slide, we can see 40 years of urban flood occurrence density. Red means very high, and the pattern is quite consistent. We can see that flooding follows buried water courses. It concentrates where surface ceiling is highest. So 3 catchments were selected based on this map as priorities to Porto. The Granja Basin, which occupies more or less 26% of the Porto's entire surface area. The Massarelos Basin, which is located in the historic center of the city, and the Poço das Patas Basin, which is the most impermeable basin in the city. More than 95% of the basin is impermeable. So 2022 and 2023 brought severe flooding to Porto, and with that, the political window opened in Porto. So let's see what this political window allowed. So what response was created in Porto? And the response was a program, a Sponge City program that was preceded by a 4-year research strategy under the Plan for Valorization and Requalification of Water Courses in Porto, the PVRLA, developed with 45 organizations across all the 85 kilometers of water courses in the city. That evidence base was the foundation for the program, and Porto's program operates across 5 axes, and what matters, at least for me today, is the governance axis. And normally you build technical capacity first, then governance, but Porto did the opposite, and I'll explain why. The governance model had to be assembled before the operational tools existed, and that inversion is not a coincidence, it reflects a structural necessity. Porto's water utility had no legal authority to coordinate other municipal actors, or even the National Environment Authority, which is also part of the governance model of this program. So Porto Water's utility had to build governance on a voluntary basis because the mandate to require it didn't exist. And that is the first signal of this diagnosis. Moving on and zooming into Esprella Central Park, which is our most paradigmatic intervention to date, and it is the reference model for the Sponge City program of Porto. Completed in 2022, it has 6 hectares, 10,000 cubic meters of retention capacity. It is integrated into a public park. Flood attenuation and recreational space share the same ground, and this is what green-gray looks like in Porto, okay? So the question is, why isn't this the default? Why isn't it the norm, but the exception? And zooming in once again to the portfolio that has been developed within the Sponge City program, we see that this portfolio targets 88,000 cubic meters of retention across the 3 priority catchments that I mentioned before, Granja, Massarelos, and Poço das Patas. This is only a selection of major projects in execution or under development. The portfolio is broader, and I'd like you to look at the funding information for each project. We have an emergency co-financing arrangement, a Council of Ministers resolution, a protocol with 2 municipalities and the National Environment Authority, European structural funds. So none of this was routine municipal investment, okay? So every single project required an exceptional effort to unlock funding, and that pattern is also a part of the diagnosis. So the program also aimed to mainstream nature-based solutions in every public space and drainage works intervention. That has not happened yet. Integration remains ad hoc, negotiated case by case, and that too is part of the diagnosis. So with all this in mind, I identify 3 governance limitations. None of them are specific to Porto. All of them are conditions that block green-gray transition in Porto and across Portugal, and maybe across other contexts. The first governance limitation refers to investment scope. And investment scope in Porto is determined not by the scale of the problem, which Porto's water utility quantified precisely, but by the availability of funding cycles that the utility cannot control. Look at Copenhagen. They have a dedicated water charge that made cloudburst investments systematic. They have a plan which is financed, delivered, no extraordinary measures. In Porto, an equivalent program required a natural disaster declaration. So that is the difference between structural renewal and a well-funded exception. Hamburg, Copenhagen, Berlin have had operational stormwater tariffs for decades. Portugal has proposed the instrument. It has been on the table since 2023. It has not yet been activated. The second limitation refers to Porto's water utility mandate. Porto Water Utility has no mandate in practice, so multiple municipal departments, companies, and other stakeholders work together on a voluntary basis, but the utility could only recommend nature-based solutions in other departments' projects. It could not require them. So every contract that opened the ground closed it gray, and only gray by default, because nothing obliges otherwise. And finally, the third limitation refers to scale. Flood risk is generated at the catchment level, which crosses jurisdictional boundaries. For example, 70% of the Granja drainage network already operates at full capacity, and part of the flood risk originates upstream in a neighboring municipality outside Porto, in other words. So no inter-municipal governance mechanism with operational capacity exists in Porto in particular and in Portugal in general. And in conclusion, Porto has demonstrated what is achievable under the most favorable conditions that we have in Portugal. And that also showed where the structural transition fails, even where we have the best conditions. So I leave you with 3 questions. How do we finance nature-based solutions integration in infrastructure renewal? Without a dedicated funding tied to a stormwater service, all integration is episodic, as we've seen in Porto. How do we create a mandate? Every work contract without a nature-based solution requirement is a missed window. Who has the authority to change that? And finally, at what scale should renewal be governed? Catchment boundaries exceed jurisdictional limits. So what governance architecture aligns who approves, who finances, and who is accountable? So these are only some of the conditions that the sector needs to build, at least in Portugal. And from my side, that's all. Thank you very much. And I'm quite happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben, for this presentation for Porto. So now I will leave the floor to Alexandra with the city of Mechelen. And if you have any questions in the meanwhile, as Ruben said, please put them in the chat. We'll take the time just after Alexandra's presentation. Alexandra, you can start.
Yes, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Normally you should be seeing it. So hello everyone, I'm Alexandra. I work for City of Mechelen on the climate adaptation team. Before I start my story, just to give you a little bit of context. Oh, and I have to see if this works. Okay. About Mechelen. So Mechelen is a medium-sized city in the northern part of Belgium. We have around 90,000 inhabitants and we have a historic city center as most of European cities do. We have quite a few wetlands around our city, and the water and wastewater utility in Mechelen, with which we work very closely together, is called PITPA. Now, why am I bringing my story today here? Mostly because this is the general view of renewed streets in Mechelen. So you could say that nature-based solutions are pretty much already in the core of what we do. And even more, whenever we have to redesign a street, we will always start with this sponge reflex. And this goes over more than just one department, but several departments make this sponge reflex already. To first look at, okay, we have to dig up the street, we have to work on a sewage system. How can we make use of this works to implement as much nature-based solutions as possible? So this is something that we do very closely together with PITPA, with the wastewater utility. This is often, or most of the time, a combination of, on the one hand, the renewal that they will do and they will pay for the works under the ground. And then the works that we do as a city above the ground, of course, we pay for those works. Sometimes when we renew a street and there is no need to renew the sewage system, then only the city is involved. But almost all of the times, whenever we need to dig up the street for sewage renewals, then of course we take the opportunity to implement as much nature-based solutions as possible. When looking at the financial split, I'm going to give you an example, but please keep in mind that this is just an example of one project that we did, and the split is sometimes different. So, for example, one street that we did was around 900K, of which PITPA then, so that the water utility paid around 660, and the city paid around 175. This can vary depending on the situation, on the context, on the works that are needed, but it can go up to 50-50, you see. Maybe interesting for you is that PITPA has normative and also regulative obligations to really work on water quality, but also on the environment. So this is something that they also have in their DNA to work on. But I can say that we really have a good collaboration with them, and this really increases the possibilities to implement more innovative solutions to work together towards good street renewals. Of course, it wasn't always like this. Mechelen looked like this, a lot of gray, a lot of cars around the year 2000 until 2009. So the question you could ask is, how did we get from here to the first pictures that I showed you? The answer is actually twofold. On the one hand, and you could say that this is more top-down, was political vision. So the best way for me to explain this is to quote our mayor, who has said on various occasions already, Mechelen rhymes with water. And it doesn't. It doesn't rhyme in English, it doesn't rhyme in Dutch, but it does show the vision that he has and the fact that water is really in our DNA and he understands it. Mechelen is built on marshlands and we should embrace it, right? That's on one hand. On the other hand, we have had a variety of European funded projects who have provided the innovative playground, you could say, to experiment, to try out new things, to learn from our mistakes, and of course with the necessary funds. This, together with an city administration that is in favor of those projects, that really wants to work on them, has made it possible to really get to some catalyst cases, you could say, that have changed a lot for Mechelen. In my opinion, one of those catalyst cases, you've seen the pictures before already, is this one. So this was an Interreg project called Water Resilient Cities. And the river was also, I heard Ruben say that there's rivers covered in Porto. Well, we did the same thing in Mechelen. So this parking lot was covering our main river. With the project, we opened up the river again, and this is really the moment that has changed a lot for the citizens, where they realized how important it is to have, and how nice it is to have more green and nature in your city again, but also for the politicians. And this has really led us to have a butterfly effect across all of the other departments and works that we have done. Ranging from the redesigning of streets with more green in them, but also like the very small actions that we take, you could say, for example, where citizens can take out the tiles in front of their houses, get some plants in there, those small actions, but also the very big city development project where we really work on creating new green-blue corridors throughout our city. All of this has been growing more and more towards the day that we are today, right? This, of course, has also led to some recognitions. Just to be quick, we have become a water-oriented living lab. We have also received the Ramsar Urban Wetland City label as a first city in the Benelux. We have received several public green space awards for the design of our climate adaptive streets, and we will also take part in the sponge label category this year that is specific for Flanders. Of course, all of this work isn't possible just from one department in the city. It is all of us working together and really having a common understanding and vision. We already have the political vision, but also the departments need to work together and share this same goal. So it's not just my department of climate, it's also not just the Department of Nature and Green, it's also the city development department, the one for mobility and public space. We all have this shared understanding that the more nature-based solutions we can implement in our city, the better. Of course, there is always the challenge for space in a city, so we don't always agree, but the general fact that we all want more green in the city is common, right? This is also very visible in our spatial policy plan. This is a plan that defines the vision for the next 20 years in Mechelen. There are 3 big pillars over here, and one of those pillars is how do we work with nature, water, and agriculture. But just the fact that these topics are one of the pillars in the spatial policy plan shows that this is really a very important role that nature and water have in our city. So you could say, wow, everything is going very, very well in Mechelen. I'm not complaining, but I'm also not saying that it's perfect, right? This is still our main square, just to give you an example. There is lots of gray. It's a very challenging thing because we have a parking space underneath. There are several events going on there. So we still have lots of work to do. We still have lots of innovations to do. And this is also just part of this water-oriented living lab mindset. There is no end point. We just keep on improving. We keep on working towards a better city, right? To give you 3 pain points, I could say, that we are struggling with today, it's that sometimes the political vision for more nature-based solutions gets put aside when not convenient. I think this is recognizable for all of us. What we have noticed is that having designated European project budgets and deliverable are good to keep our politicians accountable from time to time, so this might help. Then we also notice that there is more and more a reluctance for nature-based solutions when it comes to the cost of maintenance. I think we all know the importance of it and the return on investment that we might get, but for politicians, it isn't always as clear and it's difficult to show them this, right? And then the last point is something that we've been struggling with from the beginning. I would say we're still struggling with it, and I hope it won't stay a struggling point forever. But parking spots, it continues to be a big arguing point, where sometimes when it's really a difficult participatory trajectory, politicians might give in and gray gets chosen over green. That's just the reality, right? If I can then formulate a wish list for Mechelen, it would be that, of course, we are living in geopolitical difficult times, and we notice a very, very big shift from investing in nature and green towards defense. In itself, that is a good thing, but of course, we cannot forget that nature is actually doing good for us and keeps us human. So nature-based solutions are actually increasingly necessary to keep investing in. So my question here would be to really keep the European funding programs, because working on these innovations is key, especially if you look at the catalyst case from Mechelen and what it has done for us over the past 15 years, right? The second point here is actually more of a question. Why do we still have a choice? Why isn't nature-based solution the obvious choice whenever we dig up the street? It should just be the logical way to go, being it with a carrot or with a stick, that doesn't matter, but it shouldn't be a choice anymore. And then the third part I have here it goes back to the parking spot problem. But of course, the electrification of our car park is good, but these cars still take up as much space as the old ones. So we should also be working towards less cars, which would create a lot more space in the cities for more nature-based solutions again, to live in our cities. So that's the third part here. With that, I come to my takeaway from Mechelen, which is don't underestimate the power of local and bottom-up with the right funds and vision. Maybe I need to say here that maybe you don't always, in Mechelen we've had the luck of having funds and vision with European projects with the politicians we've had, but even when you don't have funds and vision, don't underestimate the bottom-up impact that you can have with a catalyst case that can get things moving. And that was it for me. So happy to take questions if you have some, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. This is a nice takeaway. Actually, we just have one question in the chat right now from Sophia. In the Catalyst case that you showed us, what happened to the cars? Didn't the public complain about the parking car that is missed? Thank you, Alexandra.
Of course, the public complained. I don't think it's something that I have to make prettier that it would be. Taking away car parking spaces is always difficult. In this case, we did have the luck that we actually built a parking tower a little bit further so we could divert the parking towards that space. So it was relatively easy here. But we noticed that whenever we do take green away, whenever we do take parking spots away and put more green, it's always a struggle until the moment that the people see how nice it becomes, and they don't even have to think about the climate adaptive benefits that more nature-based solutions can bring. They just notice, it's so nice over here and it's cooler over here. And whenever it's a very hot day, like we've had the past week in Europe, I go and sit under this tree. So that's the most important for them. And at that point, we notice that there's the mind shift. But sometimes we have to push them a little.
Thank you, Alexandra. I see we have two more questions. We can take them and then we will start the Q&A session with Franz, who is the moderator, and with the Mentimeter. So Luis asked, promoting infiltration tends to increase water saturation in soils. While this offers environmental advantage, it also presents a major geotechnical problem, a problem that can be exacerbated in earthquake-prone areas. How has this problem been assessed? I don't know. I think maybe this was more for Ruben.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because in Portugal, we don't. The Porto city does not sit in earthquake-prone areas, so it's not a problem to us. Our problem is, in fact, that the infiltration rate in the city, because the soil is granite, is only 10%. So, so it's very difficult. Even if we had like a very permeable city, it would be already very difficult to have high infiltration rates. But because the city is so gray, this means that infiltration rates are even less than 10%. So I understand the question that it's being posed here. Well, in contexts in which that are earthquake prone, of course, a trade-off must be considered between how much water you allow the soil to accommodate and the amount of water above which it creates instability problems. Not the case in Portugal, unfortunately, actually. But yeah, it's a good question. I've never thought about it. So Luis is coming from where? Because he's Portuguese, it seems, or at least from well, he has a Portuguese name. If you can tell us a little bit more about his context, well, it would be interesting to get to know.
Well, maybe to add in general to this question, of course, we have to have a comprehensive approach to the water cycle in the urban environment. So groundwater is part of that, and that is to be included. And in particular, I see the relation to the earthquake-prone areas and the risk there. But like in other areas where no earthquake risks exists, but where groundwater levels could be too high or too low, you need the active action to control your groundwater levels as well. it's part of the whole problem, I would say. Also to control slope stability in the environment, the urban environment, of course.
Thank you, friend, for adding. I see that we have also another question from Francisco, but it also aligned with the Mentimeter and the barriers and how we can implement better nature-based solutions. So I think we will go directly to the Mentimeter, and maybe Francisco, you will get answer, or maybe people also will raise some questions that align with you. So if you can all get back to the Mentimeter, I'll start again. Friends, I will let you moderate.
Yeah.
There's a Mentimeter. If you want, I can comment on this question.
For sure. Let's start.
Go ahead.
And we enter full screen. So, which barrier do you consider the most relevant for implementing NBS in the area where you live?
And multiple answers are possible, huh? Maybe Ruben, you could start commenting on the results. Feel free.
Yeah, I think that, it's not surprising to me that the institutional fragmented responsibilities, it is like the top ranked barrier. Well, actually, I think that my presentation revolved mainly around this. And answering to Francisco's question, I think that the main barrier, at least in Portugal, is that we may develop programs, smart city programs, and within them we may develop a number of tools. But if these tools are not integrated into planning instruments, at many scales, local level, regional level, national level. So if they are not mandatory, at the end of the day, we fall under a context in which you have to negotiate solutions on a case-to-case basis. The successfulness of those solutions depends at the end of the day of political willingness that we can have for a period of time, but that can change with a changing municipal executive. So because with that, the vision for a city, for a territory also changes. So we need to make nature-based solutions more protected from this kind of visions that, in the case that Alexandra told us about, is bearing, I think, good results, but we don't know what will happen. If the conditions, the political conditions, change in that context in particular. So my answer is very clear: integrate this kind of tools into planning instruments and make them binding and not optional.
Well, I think that is an important recommendation indeed. On the other hand, what I had what noticed in the difference between your presentation, Ruben, and Alessandra's presentation, that you are working with an integrated utility, whereas Alessandra is working in a municipal organization where responsibility is distributed between PITPA and the city. So does organization matter? Is my question. Is one style of organization better than the other? I recognize that currently in the city of Amsterdam there was an integrated utility and they is being dismantled at the moment, so it's split up again. So is there any advantage or disadvantage in integrating into one organization? Could you
Well, in our case, there's a clear advantage because we can manage all water in a holistic way, and we see that in other municipalities, the stormwater is managed by the municipality. For instance, the streams and rivers also by the municipality, but another department, and sometimes those departments, they don't talk with each other. And then we have the water supply, wastewater, with the utilities, and also for those territories that have a coastal area, even that part of the territory is many times managed by different entities, ranging from the municipality to entities that are under the umbrella of the central government. So at the end of the day, if we want to create like a resilient city, especially by looking at the blue infrastructure, what we can do with the blue infrastructure of the city, having an integrated mandate within the institution is an advantage. But as I told you in my presentation, it won't solve everything because then you'll have governance barriers that are beyond the mandate of the utility, and that the utility cannot influence, can only recommend. So yeah, I think that, well, it is something. It is not the complete answer that we need to our territories.
Thank you. Well, while on the one hand you have holistic management, you say, Ruben, I noticed that during your presentation you were asking for coordination at a catchment scale. So the next level was that you had to link with other parties as well. Alessandra, what was your because I was curious to find out more about the workability of the relation between the city and PITPA, also in the case of financing. You came up with a very nice distribution financing above ground. Comes to the city, the underground infrastructure is paid by PITPA. Is that realistic, feasible? How much time did it take to negotiate that?
It's a good question. It's something that my colleagues over at the Public Space Department will be able to tell you in detail. I won't, unfortunately. But it has been working for many years already like this. And I have to agree with Ruben that I believe that having a water utility that manages it on a bigger scale is definitely an advantage. They see the bigger picture, otherwise it will become too fragmented between the different organizations. But I do believe that as a city or as a local government, you have the role of asking your water utility for more innovative solutions and then work together. So there can definitely be an incentive going from the cities towards the water utilities and creating this atmosphere of better co-working together and creating results that otherwise wouldn't have been possible, because us as a city, we don't have the capacity to do all the water management. So it's really the on the axis of co-working that you get together here and create the best solutions possible.
Thank
And
you.
maybe just to add in terms of financing, we also pay a fee to PITPA for this water maintenance. So we pay the above ground infrastructure, but next to that, we also pay PITPA for the services that they deliver for maintaining our wastewater in the city. So I'm saying that we pay the above ground, they pay the underground, but the underground is also financed when you go back partially from the city. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that is I can imagine that it takes a lot of negotiation between the two organizations for each project to come to a distribution of investment costs, but also in terms of maintenance costs.
Yeah, good contracts.
Well, another thing that was brought up, and I would like to bring up in this discussion, is the role of EU funding in the project. I noticed in Alessandra's presentation that she mentioned that well, EU funding helped to initiate and trigger a lot of these catalyst cases, she called it, and well, I was wondering how that works for Porto. Well, Alessandra concluded with the statement that well, I hope that the EU continues funding this type of innovative projects. But my question would be, is this still innovation? Because it is proven technology, I would say. So as long as we continue to put on the sticker innovation, isn't this a barrier rather than a promoter of this? So Ruben, could you first answer my first question?
So yeah, in Porto it is the same. So many of the projects that we have implemented so far, they have been triggered by EU funds or even other funds of a national level. So that was also part of the argument, and I think it's okay because we need to have institutions, be it at the national level or at the EU level, trying to mainstream new solutions in terms of urban design that can, at the end of the day, that can build up a more resilient city or a more resilient territory. My main critique would be, for cities and for states that don't have dedicated, not funding, they don't have like dedicated revenue streams to finance this kind of solutions. So they become quite dependent on external funding. And in the case of Portugal, well, that is evident because Portugal don't have a stormwater tariff, never had actually, even though a discussion was initiated back in 2023 about around it. I think that many organizations, are always waiting for this carrot, for this EU carrot, in order to deploy and implement their projects. And I think that the climate crisis cannot wait for this kind of carrots. You know, like we need to build internal capacity to finance our projects because they are needed. They are not only decorating the cities. If the EU is implementing the most innovative, or is promoting the implementation of the most innovating nature-based solutions across EU member states, well, it depends on the funding line, because well, when we look at the cohesion policy and the partnership agreements that are celebrated between the EU and the EU member states, Probably, well, in this under this partnership agreement, well, mainstream-based nature-based solutions are being deployed. But when we look at programs such as LIFE and Horizon Europe, I'm quite confident, and I've seen it happening, that new technologies, new innovations are being considered. So the TRL of this innovation is being tested in order to achieve other levels of maturity. So I don't think there's a yes or no answer, a binary answer. I think that the EU is, on one hand, deploying what it can in the different member states, so more green and interconnected with blue can appear in the public space, and on the other hand, creating the conditions to test new solutions. So that's my opinion. Yeah.
Alessandra, would you like to add something there? And then I would like to ask Tiffany to switch to the Mentimeter question number 4 about the European Commission. I think that is an interesting question to follow up on this discussion. But Alessandra, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with Ruben here. So I think that it's a difficult question, but if you look at in the field, there are still lots of and I'm going to stay in my expertise of local authorities, but there's still a lot of local authorities that didn't implement nature-based solutions yet, and it's still a scary thing, and it's new, and it's for them it feels like innovation, although we all know already that it's proven, right? So they need still their one catalyst case to get the train moving, I believe. But I do agree that yeah, the innovation, it will stay. We need to keep working that this is innovative, right?
Yeah, on the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, any innovation, if a politician hears the word innovation, it's automatically connected to risk of failure, I would say, because it's an innovation, and so when do we leave that stigma of innovative solution and say, hey,
definitely,
it's proven technology and you can use that.
And it's something that I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but in view of time, I would like to switch to this Mentimeter question, because I think it's important. Well, you mentioned the role of financing by the EU, of co-financing or stimulating funds and innovative funds. But I could imagine that you expect and our audience expects something else from the European Commission if it comes to improve the practical implementation of nature-based solutions in the context of urban infrastructure renewal. So could you please give your answer and submit your ideas to this Mentimeter question? Could someone respond to the answers coming in, Alessandra, Ruben?
Yeah, reading to the questions, I'm thinking in Belgium we actually already have some kind of regulation in place where whenever you have to redesign streets, there is a minimum of water infiltration that you need to foresee. So there is already kind of the stick, and it does work. And that also goes back to the question of binding regulation to choose for nature-based solutions and only allow gray if nature-based solution cannot provide the services required. I kind of agree there. I do think that we are in a stage where there is enough innovative tools already to provide the services that a gray infrastructure can provide, while also, for example, still providing the infiltration. Of course, this isn't to the extent of having the biodiversity improving, etc. But it is an in-between solution that you could use. There is one street in Mechelen that we redesigned where there wasn't enough space to get all get everything in the streets together. So we worked with hydro blocks, which is a kind of pavement that gets the water in and will very, very slowly get the water to infiltrate in the ground. But it has a buffer capacity of, I think, 170,000 liters of water. So it's an in-between solution. It's not the best, but yeah.
But having this kind of combined solutions is indeed something important. And well, apparently you have regulations. Ruben is complaining about the fact that such regulations for stormwater in Portugal are missing. So maybe Europe could facilitate the international learning in this perspective by comparing regulatory frameworks applied in the different countries. Because yours is different from ours, from Germany, etc. Ruben?
Yeah, I think that the awareness exists in Portugal, so I think it's only a matter of political willingness at the central government level to finally implement it. You know, it's a little bit like the cars example that Alexandra was giving before. You know, the moment you create a new tariff that that consumers, that households will have to pay to, because there's a service that actually the municipalities or the water utilities are providing to them when it comes to stormwater. The moment you do that, there will be resistance because it will be another tax, you know. So that's why they are delaying the implementation of this step, and they have been delaying for so long, and probably it will not happen in the medium term. Well, if I had to comment on this on these recommendations, from my experience, and I see that there's a comment about the EU priorities. And actually, water is one of the EU priorities for the next for this programming period, but also for the next one, for the 2021, for the 2027, 2033, I think. And what I see is that in this period, the funding lines for water, they are very dispersed. You know, there's no connection between them, water supply, wastewater, streams, and so on. And I think that the European Commission needs to look at water in a more holistic and integrated way, and not only to water, but also to the way that water relates to other natural infrastructures, such as the green infrastructures. So, and more mixed funding for different typologies of interventions that at the end of the day can solve problems, create more infiltration, and so on. I think it would be welcome in the future. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for your comments. So what I suggest is to switch up Mentimeter question 5, Tiffany, so that to see where emphasis could be made in improving our implementation practices. And I would love to collect this your views on that, their participants, to have a better recommendation in the end on where to go to. And then it's about time to conclude, I think, and asking Fabrizio to say a few concluding words on behalf of the expert group. But let's first take a quick look at this question. What do you consider as the most important discipline to be improved in terms of implementation of nature-based solutions? Well, maintenance is clearly running up, so to say. But on the other hand, in an earlier research we did, we found many mistakes being made during the construction of the nature-based solutions facilities. Well, I'm also a bit surprised about the 0 in construction management and construction execution. While the answers are coming in, Fabrizio, may I ask you to conclude the seminar? We are already a little late, and I don't want to continue beyond the planning.
Just a few seconds to say, very interesting webinar, very good discussion. The very final point is just to also incorporate the nice questions delivered about the geotechnical assessment. Actually, the transition is not about replacing gray with green, but about redesigning the system as a hybrid integrated and adaptive infrastructure. So the point is that engineers have to have considered the water table, in designing the buildings, also because of the drainage and also because of the extra drainage, thanks to the inclusion of MBS. So indeed, in the end, let me say, just to conclude, if we want to have a resilient and livable cities, we must stop asking whether to implement the MBS and instead focus on how to systematically integrate them into every infrastructure decision we make. But before closing, let me once again thank all speakers and participants for contributing to this engaging discussion. And we are, in the meantime, very pleased to invite you to our next and final webinar in the series, which is called Co-Creation and Justice in Sustainability Transitions. Voices, Values, and Nature-Based Solutions, that will happen in June. We will advertise quite soon. In particular, this session will move the discussion one step further, focusing on the social dimension of sustainability transitions, how co-creation, inclusiveness, and justice can shape the design and implementation of a nature-based solution. So please book a place there, and we'll be happy to continue the discussion. Yeah.
Also from my side, I would like to thank Ruben and Alessandra and Paula for their support in organizing this, and Ruben and Alessandra for the excellent presentation. I think you gave a good ground for a good discussion. And I really admire, say, both cities for the steps they took so far and the example they are setting for others. I hope many more will follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you
Thank you.
all.
Have a nice day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks for this
To all.
great. Thank you.